Star Trek had died after 3 seasons on network TV in the 60s. The animated show and a few movies later did Paramount see that there was an audience for this franchise, so they tried in the early 80s to bring the original crew back for Star Trek Phase 2, a continuation of the original series, but that never came to be. But in 1987, they brought back Star Trek to our television. And with the Next Generation, they started an 18-year period of non-stop episodes across 4 different shows. So join us as we start to discuss, and this will piss some original series fans off, the golden age of Star Trek. This is the review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is Mr. Taylor first. How are you?
I'm excellent.
And Mr. Lord Deathman, voice only. How are you?
I am ready to engage.
Good. This is episode 11 of the Star Trek Project, where we will be reviewing Star Trek. All of it in order of release, kinda. Today, we're talking about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1. But before we do that, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you really can't get enough of us, join our forum. Go to Sakar at sakar.freeforums.net. You can do that by clicking on the link in the description. That will take you to the site where you can set up your account and join our forum. Get to know us. Join our podcast. If you want to, you can. As mentioned before, today we will be discussing the 25 episodes of Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation. So let's dive right into it. We start off with our section, Grandmaster's Picks. That's where I get to pick 3 episodes for the champions to discuss. And this time I picked Encounter at Farpoint, Where No One Has Gone Before, and Skin of Evil. And I ask you, Taylor, what did you think of these 3 episodes and The Next Generation in general?
When The Next Generation came out in 1987, I was not really looking forward to it. I was biased. I figured they would ruin it because it couldn't possibly be as good as the original series, greatest show of all time. So I kind of went into the first season with some biases. In my defense, the first season does have some weaknesses. Over time, most of the weaknesses that existed do get addressed, and they do improve upon them. And of course, as we all know, this does become a really great show. But when the show first came out, it had issues. Of course, it was made for syndication, which was pretty rare at this point in time, which probably meant budget was quite tight for this show, and it shows in quite a few ways. The use of music and lighting is none of the creativity that you saw in the original series. Everything looks pretty flat and by the numbers. A lot of the acting is stilted. A lot of the characters sound like they're reading a public service announcement or something. They're not giving the emphasis that the situation really requires. As I sat down to watch the first show, a lot of things jumped out at me. One being, why are there children on a starship? Don't they know how dangerous this is? I mean, they're going to face certain annihilation like every week. Really probably shouldn't have kids here. The way the bridge operates was very confusing to me. It felt like every member of the bridge crew was doing every job at the same time. And again, if I was a cynical person, I'd say these actors may have had something in their contract to say, I get as many lines as this guy over here, even if the story has nothing to do with my particular wheelhouse here on the bridge. I get to say stuff too. I also thought it was weird that members of the bridge crew don't get to sit down. There's some of them that have to stand for their 8-hour shift. That always bothered me throughout the whole length of the show. Get Worf a chair, for God's sake.
So from let's give Hawkeye the helmet, we go to give Worf the chair.
Exactly, give Worf a chair. All right. But as I said, and when the first season aired, and when the first few seasons aired, it was at a point in my life where I was quite busy and I was not able to watch it as regularly as I would have liked. I had to catch up with this show over the years, bits and pieces, whenever I could, before I was able to actually see the entire series. But this first season does have some issues, and then the premiere episode, of course, the pilot is Encounter at Farpoint. And one of the first things that happens there is Q suddenly appears on the bridge. And I thought to myself, well, now they're just ripping off Trelane from the original series. He's exactly like that character. How lazy can you be? And it went from there. I really didn't think much of the first episode at all. Now, having seen it many times since then, it's not a bad episode. I don't think it's great. I think that there were a lot of things missing that, like I said, they just didn't have their footing necessarily at that episode. In that episode, I thought Tasha Yar's character was way overblown in this first episode, which is weird because after this first episode, I liked the character just fine. So I think they did some changes to the character's personality a little bit after the first episode, because I actually like the character a lot, but I did not like her at all in this first episode. I thought she was just too in your face and too overblown. But the episode, of course, is kind of a two-part episode, and I do like the second half better than the first half, because in the second half is where Q is testing humanity to see if they do the right thing or are able to do the right thing, and they have to figure out how to save this planet that's being assaulted by this giant mass creature that they're not sure if it's a ship or if it's an alien, and they eventually figure it out and they save the day. And again, I thought that second half was a well-written episode and well executed. As far as the next episode you mentioned, Where No One Has Gone Before, I don't have a lot of strong feelings about that episode. It's fine. The one thing that I dislike about that episode is kind of the episode where they really establish Wesley Crusher as being special, as being like the Mozart of Star Trek. He can do anything. So then from there on in, they're putting him in every role. You know, he's the navigator, he's a assistant engineer, let's give him every promotion before he's even gone to school, etc. And Will Wheaton, from everything I've seen of Will Wheaton since then, on interviews and in his other acting appearances, his many appearances on The Big Bang Theory, seems like a great guy, and he's a good actor. It's got nothing to do with Will Wheaton. I actually like Will Wheaton quite a bit, and he seems to be a real nerd fanboy as well in real life. So the points there.
This is the moment that on behalf of Murph, I have to say that Wesley Crusher is an okay character, a good character, and Will Wheaton is a great guy, and he totally does not deserve the Murph couldn't join us tonight, and he wanted me to say this on his behalf. So now that's out of the way. Shut up, Wesley. Continue, Taylor.
Yes. I agree that Will Wheaton's a great guy, but I don't think Wesley Crusher was a good character overall. He wasn't, horrible. He didn't destroy the whole show or anything, but I don't think that character did the show any favors, really. I'll let Lord Deathman talk more about that episode because, like I said, I don't really have strong feelings about it. As far as Skin of Evil, that's a very important episode. It's an episode that kind of bugged me the first time I saw it because, of course, that is the episode where Tasha Yar dies. And at that point, she was one of my favorite characters on the show. I had really grown to like her. And then she dies, and it's a very interesting episode where the shuttle is crashed on the planet. They go down to try to save the people who are there, but there's this slimy black creature stopping them. And of course, it kills Tasha Yar. Now, I don't remember all the details in the stories, but Denise Crosby wanted to leave the show for whatever reason, so they had to write her out. And this, of course, was a decision she would live to regret. She will try to get back on this show someday, and we'll talk about that as the seasons go on. But she made her decision, and she was gone. So I didn't like that episode for that reason. However, that did give them the opportunity to write a really great episode with a lot of feeling, a lot of emotion, and to establish that kind of pivotal point in the show's history that would often get referred back to, that a character died. Which at the 80s, they were starting to do this more than they had in before, in earlier stages of television, but where there's more continuity, there's more callbacks to things that had happened in previous episodes than like the original series, for example. So Tasha Yar was kind of an ever-present force throughout the show, even after she had passed away. So again, that did give them opportunities to do some pretty good and interesting things with this series.
Yeah.
Other than that, the first season, again, it has issues. The acting is stilted. The action choreography is quite amateurish at times. The
Mhm.
set design, especially when they're on alien planets, was really cheap and bad looking at certain times. But of course, the show, as it went on, and even before the end of the first season, they were making a lot of improvements, and the show quickly became a lot better, which of course we'll get into in other seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Lord Deathman, what are your thoughts with these 3 episodes? Encountered Far Point, Where No One Has Gone Before, and Skin of Evil.
Yeah, starting with Encounter for Farpoint, I think that one's a mixed bag. I remember, and I was on the youngest side when Star Trek: The Next Generation began its first run on television. But I remember thinking to myself that it was a very overlong episode, and that there were a lot of different ideas to try and keep track of. At some point, there's a battle on the surface of a planet, and then there's an agitated jellyfish that seems to have a beef against people. There's an omnipresent God that is trying to, put humanity through a trial. They show you things like the ship can break in two. There's a lot of things going on in those first 2 episodes, and they're also trying to introduce a new crew of characters and get you familiar with their personalities. Not all of it succeeds, and honestly, even today, I could say that Farpoint, it sticks the landing, but after a lot of weirdly disconnected random things happening throughout the episode. But what I think the strengths of the episode are, and where they did stick the landing, is Roddenberry shows you that there's an evolution of things that have happened since Kirk's era. So he ties it to the Kirk era quite nicely by saying the technology has gotten a little further. Look, we can separate the saucer section from the aft section of a ship now. We are at detente with the Klingons. There actually is a Klingon in the fleet now. So it's not like there are enemies anymore. He's changed the status quo of some relationships in the Federation. New uniforms, right? So like he kind of does a lot for the world building to show you that we are a century in the future, and that things have changed, and that the approaches to things the Federation has changed. That even the Federation could be a more advanced and larger organization with a heavier bureaucratic layer. But all in all, it was a fairly slow episode that I do think stuck the landing as you got to the end of the challenge that Q gives to the crew. Moving on to our next episode, where no one has gone before. I like that episode, and I'm always neutral on the Will Wheaton sort of Wesley character, the Wesley Crusher character. I will say that Will Wheaton probably needed a little bit more seasoning as an actor to kind of pull off the character that Roddenberry was going for. And I think, if you just do some contextual reading about what Roddenberry was going for with the Crusher character, he was trying to put himself into the milieu. When he was younger, he was a bit of a prodigy, and he was isolated because of that. Obviously, that was something that was a profound part of his upbringing, and somehow he wanted to represent it in this new version of Star Trek. It's not always credible, and it's a little self-serving, but I didn't find that the Wesley character for me ruined my enjoyment of Star Trek the way a lot of other fans feel. I feel like, a Wesley scene is on now. That might be an opportunity to, comb your hair or
Get a drink.
grab a beverage, right? Grab a beverage or something. But it wasn't like table stakes for me. I what I love about that episode though, and I think Roddenberry is the master of high concept science fiction that any audience member at any level of education can kind of pick up on. They're out to the furthest regions of space because of this traveler character who's able to send them farther beyond. So you don't know if it's the warp speed that's done it to them, the area of space they're in, but they're having these hallucinations that are kind of like these existential crises, and some of them are genuinely terrifying. I think I had a strong impression of fear when Jean-Luc steps off the edge of a a turbo lift, and he's suddenly like about to fall into the vacuum of space. I think that happened on that episode. But that being said, all of the crew has these hallucinations, and they're trying to piece together what's going on. They link it to the Traveler. The Traveler has this minder or handler named, I think his name is Kaczynski, and he's trying to take credit for the Traveler's innate ability to kind of merge thought and reality and speed in this high concept way. And Kaczynski's a weird character, even from right down to his rank insignia. We don't really even know what he was as a functionary in Starfleet, but somehow he has all this authority to do these things with the Enterprise's engines to modify them, which seems like who would have given him these broad discretionary powers. But at the end of the day, I think it was just a really compelling episode in terms of the way Roddenberry introduced this idea of merging thought and reality at the deepest corners of space. It's like, his imagination is off the chain in that episode. And
Yeah.
then we have our third episode, Skin of Evil, which is a traumatic episode for me as a kid. I had gotten used to the Tasha Yar character, and furthermore, just watching TV as a kid, you kind of get used to the idea that like none of the main characters are gonna die. That was like the status quo of the day. Like, oh, the like she's a main character, and like there's no way she might get sick or something might like take her off for an episode, but to die. That was like one of the first times like a main character on a show had died, and I was a little traumatized by it. I was like, they are going to bring her back next episode, right? Like this is somebody's having a dream or something. But anyway, um, I still find to this day the character of Armis, the one who engineers Tasha's death, to be such a troll as a character. He's like completely sociopathic and gleefully so. Like he'll make decisions and deals and bargains with the crew during the hostage situation where he's holding Deanna, and then he'll quickly go back on them. He's like, "Oh no, I've changed my mind. No, like I could
Yeah.
do my best, right? Like, he's just such a troll because he keeps trying to move the goalposts in all their negotiations, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, what a dick. And to this day, I still feel the same way about Armis as a character. It was a great performance. I think that conceptually, the idea of how the character manifests as that slime was pretty creative and kind of
Mhm.
campy and fun. But I really liked that episode in the fact that it got to me emotionally when I was younger, and I also like it because yeah, I just thought it was a well executed there were three people in that shuttlecraft, and Deanna Troy is one of them. I don't even remember if the other two lived through that experience. I think Armis killed them, but yeah. Anyway, that's an episode I appreciate.
Yeah. It, there's a rumor that Armis in a previous life had an anonymous Twitter account. But anyway. Uh,
He sure could have.
yeah, actually. Okay. Thank you for sounding off on my picks. But I also asked you to pick episode or two or three for yourselves to discuss. So, Lord Deathman, I'm going right back to you. You can, you have actually now a broader choice because a few members couldn't make it tonight. So, go ahead. Which
Yeah.
episode do you want to discuss?
Wow. Despite the fact that the first season is problematic, despite the fact that it has definite problems with production values, special effects when you look at it today, some of those like backdrops on the planet that they're on look like they're not much better than a high school play in terms of like how they did the backgrounds, obvious paper mache boulders and things like that. The cinematography was not great, but there's still a lot to love about this first season, in my opinion. And my first pick in terms of episodes is Data Lore, or Data Lore rather. That is the episode where we meet where we meet Lore, Data's evil twin brother, and they go all in on the evil twin brother trope. But I think that they add an extra layer to it that helps break it out of the cliche. and that Lore at times becomes a somewhat sympathetic character. We kind of understand the genesis of his sociopathy. Again, this is probably Roddenberry projecting himself into the fray. Lore is a superhuman individual, and not just in terms of his strength, but his intellectual capacity, his what he can learn. So I think that that kind of superior ability in a being would have bred the idea that he is superior, that was what you would come to expect. If Data had emotions, he'd be like, yeah, I'm stronger, I'm faster than these people, I can think faster than these people. Like, why shouldn't I consider myself to be superior? I still think that Lore is a brilliant piece of character work from Brent Spiner, who plays both characters, and he does it excellently. So I've always loved that episode.
Yeah.
The next episode
No,
that I
well,
will.
wait.
No, sure.
I first let Taylor discuss one of his, and then I will get back to you, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
then you can, otherwise you keep talking, and then Taylor gets stuck with an episode he doesn't like. So Taylor, oh, he loves every episode. That's right. But anyway, Taylor.
Well, I agree with Lord Deathman about Daedalore. It's a very good episode, and Brent Spiner is a great actor, even though Data is not really one of my favorite characters in the show. But Brent Spiner is a great actor.
Wait.
Yeah, I know. Sacrilege. I know.
Whoa. Whoa.
I know. Plot
This,
twist.
I mean, I can understand you say, which Star Trek has always, especially, I said the golden age of Star Trek, but the first season actors you always see, they're not really a crew yet, if you know what I mean. But then in
Right.
season 3, 2, 4, they get to play better of each other, and it starts to be more fluid and everything. But to call Data not your favorite character, ooh, no, well, continue.
Like I said, in this first season, though, Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner are the two who are really doing the best acting in this first season. The others took more time to, like you said, get their footing and get stepped in there. And as this show goes on, we do other seasons. We'll talk more about why Data's not one of my favorite characters. I don't dislike him. Don't get me wrong, but he's just not my top tier. Anyway, so another episode. Now, despite all the flaws that Lord Deathman and I have talked about, this show did in the first season, did do some really great episodes and some really great writing. So I chose the episode Arsenal of Freedom, which to me is kind of indicative of both the bad and the good of this first season. On the good side, great story about there's this planet that has this automated system that manufactures weapons and sells them to anyone who comes by. It has an AI salesman there to try to sell these things, and it's automated and it demonstrates, so it keeps manufacturing these weapons that keep coming out and attacking the landing party and eventually attacking the ship in orbit, and they get better each time. They destroy one and another one comes back. Meanwhile, Captain Picard and the Doctor are on the planet, and they've fallen into this cave, and one of them is injured, and we get some really good character moments there and some really good development of that relationship, which of course is a very big relationship throughout the series. Meanwhile, we have Riker and Tasha Yar, and I think one other person, I don't remember, maybe Geordi was up top fighting these drones that were being created by this thing while searching for the captain and the Doctor. So again, a lot of action, creative concept, great episode. Now on the bad side, it's a jungle planet. It's obviously a soundstage. That's okay. There's apparently one species of plant on this entire planet, and it looks exactly like the plant in my backyard. Compare and contrast that to an episode from the original series like The Apple, where they beamed down to a jungle planet, which was also a sound stage. but it just felt so much bigger and so much more alien, and it had multiple different types of plants, and they were colorful, and they all look alien and strange. And when they're moving, it feels like they're actually moving great distances. Whereas on this episode, Arsenal of Freedom, as they're fighting these drones, you can just tell they're just going back and forth from about 2 yards apart on this set.
Yeah.
I'm behind this rock. Now I'm behind this tree. Now I'm behind that same rock again. Now I'm behind that same tree again.
The apple was in episode. The apple was in season 2, if I remember correctly, of
I
the
think so,
original
yes.
series. Yeah, and that one had the biggest budget of the 3 seasons of the original series,
Right.
whereas season 1 of the TNG had the lowest budget of all the seasons. So it's not
Exactly.
completely fair to compare.
Exactly right. There were
So
definitely budgetary issues. And as I said, so the negative part of the season is exemplified by the budgetary issue and the fact that it felt like they were in a closet, not on a planet. But again, didn't stop them from doing a great episode with a great story and some good acting, and again, a lot of good character development that came out of that episode.
Lord Death Man, another episode you want to talk about?
Absolutely. I'm going to jump all the way to the season finale with an episode called The Neutral Zone.
Yeah.
And the premise of this episode is essentially that the Enterprise is sent out to investigate the destruction of Federation outposts along the neutral zone, which is a region of space where they border the Romulan Star Empire. So this is an incredibly tense exercise. We haven't heard from the Romulans in quite a long time in terms of the history of the Star Trek timeline. The captain is on edge. He's feeling the pressure to maintain diplomatic relations if he can, but also to get to the bottom of why these outposts, why and how these outposts were destroyed. At the same time, there's a B story, which was pretty common in the Next Generation episodes, where I believe they find some type of a spacefaring capsule or the remains of a spacecraft that has 3 human individuals on it who were cryonically frozen from I think it was the late part of the 20th century. So these are kind of anachristic and they are humans from the past that are now sort of thrust into the future when they inevitably get defrosted. So the captain, Picard, and his crew have to negotiate this really tense situation and finding out what the Romulans are up to in a kind of cat and mouse game with that situation. And then they also have to kind of babysit these 3 humans who are kind of um, suffering from a little bit of culture shock in terms of trying to understand the difference between where they came from, which is our contemporary time of the day, to what is now happening in the future, which is, I think, 300 or 400 years in the future now. And I thought it was a really interesting episode because, again, as a young viewer, you can kind of that kind of contrast helps you understand Roddenberry's ideas. We have some archetypal characters. There's a character who was like a big deal in finance, and he was a wealthy person, and he's used to the trappings of capitalism. And the first person he wants to call is his banker to see where his money is. And Captain Picard has to tell him, we don't even deal with money anymore, bro. So you're going to have to postpone that call. We have a housewife who was kind of used to the traditional feminine role of taking care of kids. And her husband, I think she died suddenly of an aneurysm, and her husband decided to cryonically freeze her. So she's kind of getting used to a world where she has a whole lot more possibility than might have been open to her, during her contemporary time period. And then there's like a sensation-seeking kind of, I would say, an alcoholic who was probably right at death's doorstep because of his lifestyle with drugs and prostitutes and alcohol abuse. He suddenly bought into the future. All of his ailments are cured because we're in the future and the medicine is more advanced, and he's just ready to get right back up on the horse and start the whole cycle all over again since he's been given this new lease on life. But I love it. It's a wonderful episode because it introduces us back to the Romulans. It feels tense. The tension feels real. I won't go into the backstory of the production of that episode, but it's really interesting and you should check it out. So you have that. Mark Alimo, also who played Gul Dukat on Deep Space Nine, appears as a
Mhm.
Romulan here, giving a great performance. And then at the same time, you also have this issue, with the three humans from the past. So I think, yeah, I would bring up the Neutral Zone as a favorite from that first season.
Yeah, and those outposts were not destroyed by the Romulans, but by another foe, which we will meet in season 2. Taylor, you have another episode to discuss?
Well, I agree with or Death Man about how this show has a lot of episodes that have B stories, and sometimes I thought those B stories didn't work, and this is throughout the whole run of the episode. I thought B stories that were unnecessary and kind of distracted from the main story sometimes. One other episode I just wanted to bring up, just to mention, is called The Big Goodbye. And that is the episode where Captain Picard is relaxing on the holodeck doing his 1940s private eye scenario.
Dixon
And
Hill.
yes, exactly. And I bring it up for one reason mainly is that the actor Lawrence Tierney appears in that as a gangster. And he, of course, in his long career in Hollywood, played gangsters many, many times, including all the way back in the 1940s and so on. So he was kind of a quintessential for that type of role of playing a hard-boiled tough guy in the 1940s and 50s and so on. And I thought it was great that he got to do that in a sci-fi situation. And there was even a point in the episode where he actually got out of the holodeck and was in the hallway of the Enterprise and totally confused by the whole situation, but still kept, was still in that character that he was playing so well. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that one. I mean, there's a whole lot of really good episodes in this season, and we could do this all day and go through every single one of them. But I do like how this season introduced some things to us. It introduced the Ferengi, for example. It brought back the Romulans. It brought us up to speed somewhat in a couple of episodes on Klingon culture and what was going on there. So overall, a lot of really good things happen in this episode. And if you want me to talk about more and more in this season, I'm sorry, a lot of good things happen in this season, and I can keep going about episodes as long as you want to keep going. But I am going to have to eat at some point.
Yeah, I understand it. I have to sleep at some point. Um, Lord Deathman, if you have one more standout episode, I will allow it.
I do. And it would be Conspiracy, which I know is a really controversial choice these days because some of the younger heads in the fandom are like, "Oh, why were those alien shrimp taking over?" But this is before you even understand what they are. But this episode is really about conflict within Starfleet itself. So the setup here is basically Picard gets a call from a trusted colleague who is also a captain on a starship. I forget that captain's name, but the ship was the USS Horatio. And this captain, this fellow colleague, demands a face-to-face meeting with Picard. He won't say, why he wants to take the meeting, but it is absolutely urgent that they meet in person and that they talk about the situation. Picard is also navigating a B story on this, a B story that isn't quite as memorable as you'd think it would be for the tension in this particular episode, but it's just some interpersonal ship politics. But the thrust of the episode, where he has to get to this planet to meet his colleague, he does get there, and it's a very atmospheric, like it's an abandoned mining. It's not a place where you would think like highly decorated Starfleet episodes would want to meet. But he meets with two other captains, or one being an alien, then we have a human male and we have a human female captain, and they discuss that something is wrong at the highest levels of power within Starfleet. That admirals have been acting, suspiciously. Troop movements have been coordinated in ways that don't make a lot of sense. when you look at the big picture. And they're trying to feel each other out to see if each one of them is in on the conspiracy. Picard gets kind of questioned about some childhood memories because they know a little bit about the alien interlopers who are involved in this, but not quite the full picture. But to make a long story short, the Horatio is destroyed suddenly, and Picard loses his friend. And that's kind of the signal to the audience that we have to take this conspiracy seriously. But it was the first time I'd watched Star Trek, understood the world, and then saw something that looked like civil conflict within Starfleet itself, which I thought was a novel idea. And it actually frightened me because, again, as a younger watcher, you're looking at the Institute of Starfleet and you're kind of looking up to these guys. You're like, wow, they don't make mistakes. And there's no evil people in Starfleet. Like it must be some kind of mistake, right? But those guys never sleep late. They never miss exercising. They always eat right. You have all these weird ideas as a young person about it. But in any event, I love this episode because it upset my delicate and fragile world about Starfleet. And you get a payoff, a little later on down the line about what's going on, which may or may not have been the payoff you were expecting. But I thought that the setup was exceptionally well done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it was also, I think, sort of the first time that in Star Trek they, besides the movies, they went back. They had a direct follow-up continuation of another previous episode, Coming of Age, where you see the commander Decker, I think he was called. The Decker, was it Decker?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commanders are usually called Decker in Star Trek.
Commodore. Yeah.
Commodore. Yeah, and you see those. That was the first time they actually made the connection to a previous episode, which you could see as a direct continuation, like a follow-up story, which didn't happen before, I think, at least not in this direct way. And so in that regard, it's also quite an important episode. Taylor, one final one from you, if you want to.
Yeah, well, I really liked that episode. Conspiracy. I thought it was really good. I liked it the first time I saw it, and I still like it very much. Another good episode, just real quick, is one called, I think it's called The Battle, where the Ferengi have a Starfleet ship that Picard had once served on, and they were using it to exact revenge for some perceived slight that Picard had inflicted on them years earlier as a young officer in a battle that had occurred. There was a particular Ferengi officer who was trying to avenge the death of his father. And I think it was a good episode for one thing. They had already introduced the Ferengi prior to this, I believe, but this episode went a little bit further in developing who the Ferengi were, and the Ferengi, would develop quite a bit and become quite a bit different from their initial what they initially appeared as at first, and that's normal as shows develop things.
Yeah, especially in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, exactly. Things grow and you learn more and you expand on what you have there. But this gave us some idea of the Ferengi. It gave us an idea of their capabilities, their intelligence, their technology, and whether or not it was equivalent or how it stacks up to Federation technology and so on. So I thought it was a good episode of world building, in addition to just a pretty good personal episode of focusing on Picard and his life.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this will conclude this month's episode of the Star Trek Project. I mean, we have discussed like 9 episodes out of 25. You should get the idea now. So we hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, help us out. Like and share this review. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. And join our forum at sakar.freeforms.net. Just click on the link in the description. Episode 12 of the Star Trek Project, we will be discussing The Next Generation Season 2, of course. Don't forget to also check out our review series for the Penguin and Agatha All Along, which are currently running on our channel. But for now, just let me thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish you to live long and prosper. Bye.